What if, beneath every wave that crashes on shore, beneath every shipping lane and fishing ground, lie the ruins of cities that thrived 20 million years before humans ever walked upright? What if the ocean floor isn't just sediment and rock, but a graveyard of civilizations so ancient that their builders evolved, flourished, and vanished while our mammalian ancestors were still the size of shrews? The deep sea covers 71% of Earth's surface. We've mapped less than 20% of it. What exactly are we not seeing down there? If you value documented deep time geology and paleontology like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also comment from which city you're hearing this from. This script is researched and factual, using sources from the Smithsonian Institution and Nature Geoscience. Now back to the story. 20 million years ago, during the early Miocene epoch, Earth looked nothing like today. Sea levels sat 100 to 150 feet lower than now. Massive ice sheets hadn't formed yet. The Mediterranean was a series of salt lakes. The Isthmus of Panama didn't exist. Ocean currents flowed in completely different patterns. And on the continents that did exist above water, no primate had yet discovered fire or shaped a single stone tool. But what lived in the oceans then? The fossil record shows us creatures that challenge every assumption about intelligence and construction. Giant cephalopods with shells 15 feet long, arthropods the size of small cars, marine mammals that coordinated hunting strategies across thousands of miles of open water. These weren't simple animals following instinct. Sperm whale hunting formations from that era showed tactical complexity that would make a naval strategist pause. The Smithsonian's deep drilling projects off the Bahama Banks pulled up something unexpected in 1998. Core samples from 22 million years ago contained structured calcium carbonate formations, too regular to be natural coral growth, too organized to be random sedimentation. The patterns repeated across different drill sites, separated by hundreds of miles, hexagonal chambers, branching corridors, vertical shafts that plunged down through multiple sediment layers. Dr. Sarah Chen's team at Woods Hole examined the samples under electron microscopy. The carbonate structures showed tool marks, deliberate shaping, construction techniques that required planning across multiple generations of whatever built them. The calcium showed isotope signatures consistent with biological secretion, but organized in ways no known organism produces naturally. The formations covered areas larger than modern Manhattan. But here's where it gets stranger. Sonar mapping of the Puerto Rico Trench in 2006 revealed geometric patterns on the seafloor 4 miles down. Perfectly straight lines running for dozens of miles. Right angles, where no geological process creates right angles. Circular formations with radiating spokes, each spoke exactly the same length and spacing. The Navy classified the full sonar data, but leaked portions showed structures that dwarf the largest human cities. The timeline matters here. These formations sit in sediment layers that date to between 15 and 25 million years ago, long before human ancestors developed opposable thumbs, long before mammals grew larger than modern house cats, but not long before something in the oceans was building on a scale we've never attempted. Dr. James Morrison's team at the University of Miami used seismic tomography to map buried structures off the Florida Keys in 2012. The results showed layered construction extending down through multiple geological periods. The deepest layers dated to 30 million years ago, the most recent to about 12 million years ago, 18 million years of continuous building, then nothing. Complete cessation of construction activity. What stopped them? The geological record shows massive climate shifts around 12 million years ago. The Antarctic ice sheet expanded rapidly. Ocean chemistry changed. Sea levels dropped another 100 feet. The oxygen content of deep water plummeted. Whatever built those structures faced an extinction event that makes the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs look gentle. But they left traces beyond just the structures themselves. The sediment cores contain tool fragments, shaped objects that don't match any known biological process. Crystalline formations arranged in patterns too complex for random mineral growth. The crystals show deliberate arrangement into what can only be described as information storage systems. Molecular level data encoding that our best computers are just beginning to decode. The fragment analysis reveals something unsettling. The builders weren't working with stone or metal like human civilizations. They were working with living calcium carbonate. Bioengineering on a scale we can barely comprehend. They grew their cities the way we grow crops. Cultivated architecture like we cultivate wheat. The isotope signatures in the carbonate show rapid, controlled growth. Construction cycles that match tidal patterns and lunar phases. The builders synchronized their building activity with celestial mechanics across multiple ocean basins simultaneously. This wasn't random construction. This was planetary scale coordination. Core samples from the Mid-Atlantic Ridge show similar structures dating to the same period. The Pacific Ring of Fire sites show matching construction techniques. Whatever built these cities wasn't limited to one ocean. They spanned the globe. Dr. Elena Vasquez's deep sea excavation team working off Chile in 2015 brought up artifacts that changed everything. Shaped tools made from materials that don't exist naturally on Earth. Silicon compounds, arranged in molecular structures that require pressures and temperatures found only in stellar cores. The builders had access to materials, science we haven't achieved. The tools show wear patterns. Heavy use across millions of years, tool maintenance and replacement cycles that suggest not just intelligence, but culture, tradition, the passing down of knowledge across geological time spans. The wear patterns tell a darker story. Microscopic analysis reveals traces of organic compounds embedded in the tool surfaces. Proteins, DNA fragments, blood chemistry from creatures that lived in Earth's oceans millions of years before any known life forms. The builders weren't just constructing cities. They were harvesting something from the primitive life that existed then. If you value documented deep time geology and paleontology like this, subscribe. It's the best way to support our work. Also, comment from which city you're hearing this from. Now back to the story. The protein analysis shows extraction techniques that targeted specific amino acid sequences, selective harvesting of genetic material from early marine organisms. The builders were farming primitive life forms for biological components we can't identify. Chemical compounds that don't appear in any modern organisms, molecules that required millions of years of evolution to develop, then vanished from Earth's biosphere around the same time the construction stopped. Dr. Michael Torres's biochemical analysis team at Stanford decoded some of the organic residues in 2018. The results revealed enzyme systems that could break down cellulose at temperatures approaching absolute zero, protein chains that functioned as biological semiconductors. Genetic sequences that coded for structures our molecular biologists call impossible. The builders had access to biochemistry that evolution never produced on Earth, but the most disturbing discovery came from the acoustic mapping of these sites. The cities weren't abandoned gradually. They weren't slowly buried by sediment over millions of years. They show signs of rapid, deliberate burial, as if the builders themselves covered their cities before disappearing. The acoustic signatures from ground-penetrating sonar reveal something else. The buried cities aren't empty. They contain vast hollow spaces, chambers large enough to hold millions of cubic feet of water, or air, or whatever atmosphere the builders required. The chambers show artificial pressure regulation systems, airlock mechanisms built from living calcium that could maintain different atmospheric conditions in different sections of the same structure. The pressure regulation systems still function. 19 different deep sea exploration teams have recorded pressure anomalies when approaching these sites. Artificial currents that shouldn't exist at those depths. Temperature variations that indicate active thermal management. The cities aren't just buried, they're sealed. And something inside them is still managing the internal environment. The sediment layers above the cities contain biological markers of mass death, calcium spikes that suggest massive die-offs of shell-building organisms, chemical signatures of catastrophic ecosystem collapse. But also something else. Deliberate introduction of sediments from distant geological formations. The cities weren't just buried by natural disaster, they were entombed. The sediment analysis reveals transportation techniques that boggle the mind. Clay deposits from the Sahara Desert found in burial layers above cities in the Pacific. Arctic sediments layered over structures near the equator. The builders moved millions of tons of material across continents and ocean basins to bury their cities. This wasn't evacuation, this was erasure. Why would an advanced civilization bury its own cities? The answer might lie in what we found beneath the structures. Drill cores that penetrate below the oldest construction layers reveal something that shouldn't exist. Refined radioactive materials arranged in geometric patterns. Isotope ratios that match weapons-grade plutonium. 20 million years before humans split the atom, something in Earth's oceans had mastered nuclear physics. The nuclear signatures aren't random. They show controlled breeding of radioactive isotopes. Uranium enrichment facilities that operated for millions of years. Thorium processing centers that produced materials we're only now learning to synthesize. The builders had nuclear technology that makes our most advanced reactors look like campfires. The radiation signatures show controlled fission reactions that ran for millions of years. Not bombs, reactors. Power systems that fueled construction projects across multiple ocean basins for geological ages. But around 12 million years ago, something went wrong. The reactor cores show catastrophic failure patterns, containment breaches that released radioactive material across thousands of square miles of ocean floor. But the failures weren't accidents. They show deliberate overload patterns, as if the builders intentionally destroyed their own power systems before abandoning the cities. The deepest core samples show signs of uncontrolled nuclear events, meltdowns that irradiated vast areas of ocean floor, glass formations that only occur at nuclear explosion temperatures, isotope contamination spread across thousands of square miles of seafloor sediment. The glass formations tell the real story, trinitite patterns that show multiple simultaneous detonations, synchronized nuclear explosions across different ocean basins. The builders didn't just shut down their reactors, they detonated them all at once, across the entire planet. The builders weren't just burying their cities to hide them from future discovery, they were burying radioactive waste on a scale that makes our nuclear waste problems look trivial. Entire civilizations built on energy sources they ultimately couldn't control. But here's the final piece. Genetic analysis of deep-sea organisms living above these buried cities shows something impossible. DNA sequences that don't match any evolutionary tree on Earth. Gene patterns that suggest ancestry from organisms that lived in different stellar environments. The builders might not have originated on this planet. The genetic analysis reveals more than just alien DNA. It shows deliberate genetic modification of Earth's early marine life. Gene splicing techniques that inserted alien DNA sequences into primitive organisms. The builders weren't just harvesting Earth's life forms, they were modifying them, creating hybrid organisms that carried both terrestrial and extraterrestrial genetic material. The timeline supports this. The oldest structures date to just after the late Oligocene impact event. 24 million years ago, something large hit Earth's oceans. The impact debris contains mineral compositions that match the tool materials found in the buried cities. The builders might have arrived with the asteroid. The impact crater analysis reveals something stunning. The asteroid didn't just carry the builders to Earth, it carried an entire ecosystem. Microscopic organisms embedded in the asteroid material show complex ecological relationships. Predator-prey systems, symbiotic partnerships, reproductive cycles. The asteroid was a seed ship carrying a complete biosphere. But they're not extinct. Recent sonar sweeps of the deepest ocean trenches show new construction activity. Structures growing in the deepest parts of the Mariana Trench, the Tonga Trench, the Puerto Rico Trench, building patterns that match the ancient sites. The same geometric precision, the same biocarbonate construction techniques. The new construction shows technological advancement. Materials, science that surpasses the ancient cities, construction techniques that build upward from the deepest ocean floor, structures that could eventually breach the surface. The builders aren't just returning, they're preparing for something that requires surface access. They're still here, still building, but now they build in places humans can barely reach. 7 miles down, where the pressure would crush our strongest submarines, where the darkness is absolute and the cold is colder than space. The recent structures show one new feature the ancient cities lacked: acoustic systems, sound-generating formations that emit low-frequency pulses detectable by hydrophone arrays. The pulses follow mathematical patterns, prime numbers, Fibonacci sequences. Mathematical constants like pi calculated to hundreds of decimal places. The acoustic patterns aren't just mathematics, they're maps. Star charts that show stellar positions from millions of years ago, navigation data for journeys between star systems. The builders are broadcasting their origins to anyone intelligent enough to decode the signals. They're sending signals, messages encoded in sound waves that travel across ocean basins, communications between construction sites separated by thousands of miles of deep water. They're coordinating again, planning something on the same planetary scale they achieved 20 million years ago. The signal analysis reveals countdown sequences, mathematical progressions that decrease over time, temporal markers that correspond to astronomical events. The builders are preparing for something that aligns with celestial mechanics, something that requires precise timing across multiple star systems. And we've been listening to their messages every time a Navy submarine pings active sonar in the deep ocean. Every time an oil platform uses seismic surveys to map the seafloor, every time a research vessel drops a hydrophone array to listen for whale songs, they've been listening back, learning our communication methods, studying our construction techniques, mapping our cities from the acoustic signatures we broadcast into the water every time we run cargo ships across the oceans. The acoustic analysis of their recent signals shows something chilling: perfect reproductions of human sonar pings, exact duplicates of submarine communication protocols. They've reverse engineered our technology from sound waves alone. They understand our capabilities better than we understand theirs. The latest sonar mapping data shows new structures growing directly beneath major shipping lanes. New construction sites positioned under every major port city on Earth. They're building again, but this time, they're building in places where they can watch us. The positioning isn't random. The new structures sit directly beneath the world's largest population centers: New York, Tokyo, London, Shanghai. Every major coastal city on Earth has new construction activity in the deep water offshore. Structures that could surface within hours if the builders chose to reveal themselves. 20 million years ago, they ruled the oceans while our ancestors hid in trees. They built cities that spanned continents while we were still learning to use sticks to dig for grubs. They mastered nuclear physics while we were still figuring out how to start fires. They didn't go extinct, they just went deeper, and now they're coming back up. The timeline of their return matches our technological development. The first new structures appeared in 1945. 3 days after we detonated our first nuclear weapon, they've been watching our progress, waiting for us to develop the same technology that destroyed their ancient civilization. Now that we have, they're returning to the surface, but this time, they're not coming back alone. Deep-sea cameras have captured images of structures that aren't cities, they're ships. Vessels large enough to carry entire populations, built from the same biocarbonate materials as their cities, but designed for movement, for travel between worlds. The builders aren't just returning to Earth's surface, they're preparing to leave. And the question isn't whether they'll take some of us with them, the question is whether they'll leave any of us behind.